Sometimes even the most talented filmmakers completely crash and burn. Sometimes they do it themselves, like Roman Polanski or Woody Allen, who destroyed their own legacies by doing genuinely awful things, even if somehow studios still keep working with them. But there's also directors who became laughingstocks for less serious, but still pretty embarrassing reasons. Maybe they ran out of good ideas, started talking too much nonsense, or completely lost their touch. It's not just about making flops. It's about going from making really great films to films so embarrassingly bad, you wonder what the hell happened. From once great directors like Francis Ford Coppola to newer filmmakers who've totally sold out, here's a list of 10 formerly respected filmmakers who've become complete jokes. Look, we didn't even really need a second Avatar, never mind a third one. James Cameron's weird obsession with these blue aliens is getting pretty tiresome at this point. He used to be one of the most exciting filmmakers out there. Remember The Terminator, Aliens, and obviously Titanic? Legendary stuff. But now he's dedicated something like 20 years of his career exclusively to Avatar. We've got another sequel coming this year, then another one scheduled for 2029. Sure, the movies make money, but come on. Cameron is completely stuck in this world, refusing to do anything new. Honestly, it's just sad at this point. Greta Gerwig used to be a genuine indie darling. She basically embodied the entire mumblecore movement. Movies like Frances Ha, Baghead, Hannah Takes the Stairs made her the face of independent cinema for a while. Then she started directing her own stuff. Lady Bird, Little Women, both smart, energetic, beautifully crafted films that made people fall in love with her all over again. But then things took a turn. First she made Barbie. Alright, whatever. Working with Mattel wasn't great, but fine, she got away with it. But now she's signed an 8-movie deal with Netflix to make the entire Narnia series. Seriously? Completely selling out her indie roots, joining up with a streaming giant known for treating movies like disposable content. It's genuinely disappointing seeing someone who cared so deeply about independent cinema cash in like this. Pretty sad to see Francis Ford Coppola go from making absolute masterpieces, movies like The Godfather or The Conversation, to whatever the hell Megalopolis was supposed to be. A complete disaster. It cost something like $120 million and only made back $14 million at the box office. Coppola was literally one of the key filmmakers behind the entire new Hollywood movement, a genuine legend. But Megalopolis proves something important. Just because you have the money and the power to make any movie you want, doesn't mean you should. Honestly, it looks like he totally lost touch with what made his earlier films great. Watching it was like seeing a filmmaker so out of control, nobody had the guts to tell him no. This guy might be the most irrelevant big-name filmmaker working today. Yeah, he made some classics once upon a time. But lately his movies feel desperate, empty, and completely pointless. Stuff like House of Gucci, Napoleon, and Gladiator 2, all giant, empty films that cost millions and say absolutely nothing. Honestly, it seems like Scott just wants power and control these days. He's more focused on feeding his ego, constantly complaining about anyone who doesn't think he's the best director alive. But the films he's making now have nothing interesting to say. Just huge budgets and zero style or substance. It's clear filmmaking has become nothing more than a cash machine to him now. M. Night Shyamalan's career has always hinged entirely on plot twists. So much so that the biggest twist now would be him making a movie without one. He broke out huge with The Sixth Sense. 6 Oscar nominations. Everyone thought he was a genius. Then came stuff like Lady in the Water and The Last Airbender, movies so awful they almost ended his career completely. He bounced back a bit with Split and Glass, but even those got criticized heavily for their pretty questionable portrayals of mental illness. Then came Old, which was honestly ridiculous enough to push Shyamalan firmly into joke territory. And then his most recent movie, Trap, got mixed reactions too. At this point, it feels like his best years are way behind him, and people aren't really taking him seriously anymore. So, Nicholas Winding Refn has definitely made some great movies, like Drive. That one's pretty much a masterpiece. Ryan Gosling as a stunt driver doubling as a getaway guy, trying to protect the woman he loves when everything goes sideways. Stylish, tense, beautifully made. Just a killer film. But here's the thing. Drive is basically an outlier. Refn's other movies just don't come anywhere close. And if you've seen any of his recent stuff, you know exactly what I mean. His short film, Beauty is Not a Sin, it dropped on Mubi recently, and people got pretty annoyed when they realized it was basically just a commercial in disguise. Not sure how Refn ended up doing undercover ads for fashion brands, but I hope he figures himself out sooner rather than later. Joel Schumacher actually started out strong. Movies like The Lost Boys, St. Elmo's Fire, he had a real following in the beginning. Looked like he'd become one of those Hollywood directors you could count on. But somewhere along the way, things went seriously off track. And then came Batman and Robin, famously called one of the worst movies ever made. Schumacher made some insane directing choices, and audiences couldn't stop laughing, but definitely not in a good way. But that's not even his only bad movie. After that, he did stuff like Bad Company, The Number 23, Blood Creek, and critics tore all of them apart. Honestly, I don't know what happened to Schumacher after the early 90s. He had talent, but then he completely lost it. No clue where it went. Mel Gibson used to be one of Hollywood's biggest stars, no question. Mad Max, Gallipoli, Lethal Weapon. And when he started directing, people took him seriously. Movies like The Man Without a Face and Braveheart won him tons of praise. But then came the controversies. The backlash against the Passion of the Christ for being anti-Semitic, plus incidents involving racism and homophobia, and Gibson's reputation tanked completely. He's still directing, unfortunately. Movies like Hacksaw Ridge actually got good reviews. But now we have his latest, 2025's Flight Risk, and it pretty much confirms he's finished. Gibson's name is barely even visible on the posters. They're trying to hide it. And Mark Wahlberg's hair alone is so bad it should count as a crime. Critics ripped this one apart. Total disaster. And it just makes clear that Gibson's career is basically over. Look, I hate to say this, but Dario Argento hasn't been a horror master in a very long time. This is the guy who made legendary films like Deep Red, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and Tenebrae, not to mention the classic supernatural horror Suspiria. He was massively influential in horror, totally iconic. But these days, his films just keep getting worse. Phantom of the Opera, The Card Player, Dracula 3D, just one disappointment after another. It's honestly sad to see his career going down like this, especially since his old-school fans from the 70s and 80s keep hoping he'll turn it around. At least Argento recently surprised everyone by giving a really good acting performance in Gaspar Noé's Vortex. But when it comes to directing movies, now Argento's just become kind of a joke. And yeah, that hurts to say. Xavier Dolan used to be the young, controversial indie director everyone talked about. He made his debut film I Killed My Mother at just 20 years old, showed it at Cannes, and it blew people away. He was bold and gritty, and he doubled down on that style with movies like Mommy, which came out in 2014 and marked him as one of the best young filmmakers around. But then Dolan announced he's quitting filmmaking completely. And his reason? Because he wasn't getting enough critical recognition or awards attention for his later movies. Stuff like Matthias and Maxime or The Night Logan Woke Up. Honestly, it's tough to take any filmmaker seriously if they're making movies just for validation or trophies. Any director who really cares about filmmaking wouldn't quit over something as petty as that.